Good morning, students. So welcome to today's paper discussion. Okay, so we'll see the headlines at a glance. So very important headlines. So Constitution Amendment Bill, the first time since the BJP comes into the power in 2014. From 2014, this is the first time a bill got rejected in the parliament. So it's a major setback for the BJP government. So we can see how, and from previous classes we are discussing about this bill, so how it was going to connect the women's reservation as well as the delimitation to the 2011 census instead of the fresh 2027 census. So this bill, if it is accepted, so based on the 2011 census, the delimitation will comes into the effect, and with the delimitation comes into the effect, the number of seats from 543, it will reach to its maximum strength of Lok Sabha, nearly 850 seats, and along with women, so nearly around more than 285 seats in 850 seats. 285 seats will goes to the women, but the oppositions and all the other who is not favoring the favor of this bill, they strongly rejected this bill as this is a constitution amendment bill. It's need a special majority. It's a major setback for the government, as it's the first time since the 2014. So this is the first time the bill was rejected in the parliament. Okay. So next. So, and again there is one more important news. The Iran declares Strait of Hormuz open. So what does it mean that it opened? So we know that Iran conflict is going on, and the Strait of Hormuz was confiscated, or it was closed by the Iran by laying the sea mines and all. So now the Iran announced, because the peace talk between the Iran and US is going smooth. So as a result, the Iran announced that now the Strait of Hormuz, which controls the 20% of the global oil trade, is open. So suddenly as into the effect, the prices of the the price of the oil per barrel got decreased significantly yesterday after the announcement of this open of Strait of Hormuz by Iran. So we'll also discuss this, and along with that, so again there are some repeated articles in the repeated editorials. So why women's reservation can't wait? It's almost a repeated. So, but we'll discuss this one. This one was very new, because how the war on Iran, because we see that it's very, it's not very much in the limelight, but it is also one of the very serious issue. There is a protest happening in a Delhi NCR region, Delhi National Capital Region. There is a worker protests are happening, because it's not significantly covered, but today we'll cover in our paper discussion. And next we'll discuss okay. So you see here, so Rohingyas are, so they were the marginalized group from the Myanmar Rakhine region. So nearly in 2025, around 900 Rohingyas are drowned while they are reaching the faraway countries. So that is very important thing to note. And this is also very important. Myanmar ex-president Aung San Suu Kyi's sentence reduced, because as the Myanmar is our neighbor, it's very important for Northeast to control the Northeast insurgency, and also our famous Act East policy, and also to limit the Chinese influence. So Myanmar is a very important partner, and it is also a member of the BIMSTEC. Okay, so the Myanmar present, it was ruled by military's junta, it was the military rule was going on in Myanmar, and the democratic leader, she was jailed in 2021, and her sentence was reduced, and the political prisoners are also given some amnesty. So we'll also discuss. It's very important news for India. And these are the important news, and there is one important news in the Indian Express also. So as in the Iran conflict is almost closing to end, as we see closing to end, who is the real winner? here the author says the China is the real winner, not the US, not the Iran, not the other country, not the Israel, but the China is the real winner. So we'll also discuss that why China is the real winner. Okay. Now let's go into the detailed analysis. Okay. So Constitutional Amendment Bill. So the Constitutional Amendment Bill was the Constitutional Amendment Bill, part of delimitation package, was defeated. It's a major setback for government. But the opposition joined hands, all the opposition parties. So it's a special majority bill. So this bill, so this is 131st Constitutional Amendment Act. And this bill, according to this bill, if this bill was accepted, so there will be major constitutional amendment for the 2023 passed Women Reservation Bill, and along with that, so new delimitation commission will come into effect, and this new delimitation commission will take 2011 as the census, and the seats from 543 at present, it will increase to 850 to the fullest. Okay, but we'll see why this bill was failed, why important reasons, why this special majority, exactly what is this special majority, and this, as it is a constitutional amendment, as it's need a special majority. A special majority mean according to the Article 368. So it's a special majority. Special majority in the sense 2/3 majority. And this special majority, for especially to this constitutional amendment bill, there is some criteria. Two important conditions it has to meet. So the first important condition was, so it's more than 50% plus attendance. 50% plus attendance should be there. So yesterday the voting was happened around the 7:30 p.m. like that. So yesterday's attendance was around 528. So this first condition has met. And second condition, in this 50% plus attendance, 2/3 should favor the bill. So in that 528, the 2/3 was around 354. So around 352. So this is the through 2/3 majorities of yesterday's attendance. Yesterday attendance after 543, 528 MPs were attended, and among that, to get the 2/3 means at least 252 votes should get to pass the bill. But how many votes? Yesterday it got 298 votes. 298 votes. So the second condition didn't met. So as this special majority case, like 50% attendance, it was yes, 50% attendance was there, and 2/3 in favor, no. Out of 352 votes, so how many votes? Yesterday the bill got 298 votes. So as the second condition hasn't met, so the bill was deemed to be not passed. The bill deemed to be not passed. So what are the conditions when we need this special majority? Exactly. Why we need this special majority? What are the important conditions when we need the special majority? First one, to amend the fundamental rights. To amend the fundamental rights. And second one, DPSPs. To amend the DPSPs. And third, central state relations. Central state relations. And also the fourth will be election of president, election commission and certain acts, etc. Or high courts, Supreme Court judges. So these kind of any provision in the constitution itself to amend. So you need special majority. Along with this, any provision in the constitution itself. So you need special majority. These are the important scenarios. So yesterday the bill was deemed to fail. We don't know whether it might pass in the next session or again. So the 33% reservation may not come into picture in the 2029 elections. Maybe it may come into the picture in the 2034 elections. So, but not in the 2029 elections as of now. Maybe in the next sitting or the next month. So maybe might be that bill might pass, but as of now, as yesterday's bill was failed, to materialize. So the women's reservation may extend or will apply from the 2034 and after the fresh census of 2027. Okay, that is important thing. Next, Iran declared Strait of Hormuz open. So Strait of Hormuz, so which is the very important for 20% of global oil trade. So it was the Iran announced, so it was open as the talks are getting succeeded, like it's going in a smooth path. So Iran announced that it was open, but here there is one issue. So it was good for India. Yesterday the prices of the fuel prices came down. The markets were happy. It's also good news for countries like India and other countries who heavily dependent on the Gulf fuel. So it was very happy. But US, what it has said that it still, so US still control the Iranian port, still control the Iranian, means it US said, so still we was close to the Iran ports, like Iran is a US blockade to the Iran ports were not released. So US was very strong. Even Iran opened the Strait of Hormuz, but the blockade on Iran ports by US, it was not relieved. Why? Because US still want to block the countries which are doing the trade with Iran. So that's why the Iranian ports blockage was not opened by US, but Iran opened the Strait of Hormuz. Again, the Iran was telling that if the US was still blocking our trade, so we will again close the Strait of Hormuz. So that is the important thing related to this article. And we also see about the 20% of the global world trade, oil supply was passed through this strait, and 10% of the world trade. So the 10% yesterday what happened? So the 10% of fuel prices dropped significantly, like below $90. It was around $82 a barrel. So yesterday, because of this announcement, the fuel prices came down and the markets are stabilized. These all things were happened. And next article. So Myanmar's ex-president, so Aung San Suu Kyi. So she is our Iran's former president, and she has a party called National League of Democracy. National League of Democracy. National NLD. Simply we can call NLD. And she is a former Nobel Prize winner. She is a former Nobel Prize winner for peace, and she started her government after 27 years of exile. And even now there is a 27 years sentence. 27 years sentence. So in 2021, what happened? So after number of years of exile in the European country, she came back to Myanmar. When she came back to Myanmar, and people obviously they liked her, they voted her into the power. But in 2021, what happened? In 2021, so the army coup. The army has taken the control. And she was sentenced to 27 years of prison. 27 years of imprisonment. But now what happened? Her sentence was reduced. She was not released from the jail, but her sentence was reduced, and some political prisoners will be there along with her who they were arrested. So their sentences also reduced. So this is very important development in the in our neighborhood. Why it is very important development? Because it's not just for that. It is also important because for India. For India, so Myanmar is very important because the Myanmar is in the Act East. India's important, very important policy, Act East policy. Myanmar is very important partner, and also BIMSTEC. So again, the Myanmar is very important partner, along with to control the China's influence in the Asian countries. So again, the Myanmar is one of the important partners, and to control the Northeast insurgency. Again, the Myanmar is very important partner, and more than this, the Myanmar is our next neighbor. So that's why this is very important developments. So India was in the dilemma. So this was the situation, because whether India has to support the democracy or whether India has to support the realistic situation of that is to support the army government. So India was in the dilemma. So for that, this is very important, significant news for sure. And we'll see the next important article. So China is the real winner of the Iran conflict. So Iran conflict, China and Iran conflict. So how China gains? It's not the Trump. This article was published in the Indian Express. So the other was really, it's not the Iran, it's not the US, it's not the Israel, but the China is the real winner. Because why? China does the extensive trade with Gulf countries, including the Iran also, and also import heavy oil. So when the war was limited, so definitely who will be the winner? The people who do trade. If the war, it's not more than roughly 1 month, you can say. The Iran conflict was roughly 1 month. So it's a very limited war. In the limited war, who will prosper? The people who do the conflict, so who do the trade. So here, obviously the China, who does the major global trade partner. So this is very good news for China. Why? In the previous years, so in the previous era, if you can say the Cold War. During that time, so the ideology which matters. Ideology is the matters. That is called geopolitics. This is geopolitics. But at present, you can see clearly. So it's not the ideology, it's the economic strength. It's the economic strength which decides how much power you have in the global stage. It's not the geopolitics which rules the world now, it's the geoeconomics. It rules the geoeconomics. Geoeconomics is the one, because we can see in the Cold War era, the geopolitics, clearly the ideologies of the countries which was dominated the global politics. But it's not now. At present, the world is becoming more realistic. It's the trade which dominates the global power politics. Even if you want a global power, you need major share in the trade. So that's what it is happening. Even the wars, even if you want to fight a war, a long-term wars, it depends on the supply chain which supplies the weapons to you in the battleground. So here we can see the China is a clear winner. And when it compares to the India, India in this conflict, it has to manage its relations with Iran, US, along with it should be a major competitor. It should maintain as a major competitor to, at least major manufacturing competitor to China. Then only, so the doing trade or investing in India looks very beneficiaries for the foreign investors. So these are the important things. But what are the important challenges for China? Okay, here it is the winner because the trade, so it's a limited war. So now the everything was getting cooled. So obviously the China can increase its trade as the China directly involves in, as China directly not involved in war. If it is not directly involved in war, there is no sanctions. If there is no sanctions, like its strategy is stay out of the conflict, out and gain. So this is the Chinese strategy: directly not involved in war, and there will be no sanctions, stay out and gain clearly. And what are its major challenges? Okay, this is all about the positives. Is there any important challenges to China as of now? Just imagine if the conflict rises, then definitely it is a difficult situation to China. And also the choke points. And it's also the choke points like Strait of Malacca. These are the choke points, and the rise of not the US naval dominance. These are the important challenges for the China. So what happens when the less conflict, the trading countries will gain more. So this is what happens. So if it is less, so obviously this is good. So we'll see the next article. So the protests in Delhi. So the protests in Delhi, NCR region, National Capital Region. So the protests in Delhi. So why did the protests are happening in Delhi? The important part was as a price rise, as the trigger. Like you can see, it's a chain of events. So the protests are because of the chain of events. So the trigger was Iran conflict. So how it was triggered this? So Iran conflict, what happened? The prices of input goods, the prices of LPG and other input goods raised. So what happens is to the companies? The input prices was raised, and when the input prices was raised, what happens? They will get the less margin of profits. If they get the less margin of profits, whether they increase the wages? No. So input prices rise, so less profits and no wage rise. So less profits, no wage rise. What happens? So if there is less profits and no wage rise, as the inflation was increased, the prices are increased. As we can see, even a normal plate tiffin meals, or the plate breakfast, or the plate idli, or the plate dosa, previously it was around 30-40 rupees. Now it was increased to 50 rupees, and nearly 50 rupees it was increased. So the inflation is getting increased, but the price was same. Why these companies are getting less profits? So, but how the government reacted? Government take it as a law and order problem. As it was triggered by, it's the trigger. By the global trigger was Iran conflict. The LPG and oil prices increased. With this increase, the input material cost for the companies, factories was increased. As the input costs are increased, the margins become slimmer, and as it is unable to increase the prices for the wages. And for the workers, the wage was not there, so they went for the protest. And the government see it as a law and order problem to control this protest. And here they are demanding for at least the minimum 20,000 salary. So 20,000 minimum wage. So what is one of their core demand? Minimum 20,000 rupees should be the minimum wage. That is the core demand. So we'll see what are the key challenges. So as it is a very important, as India want to be a global manufacturing hub, if they can't understand the problems of its workers or its cheap labor, it's very difficult to turn it into a capital potential, full potential of the India. So what are the key challenges here? The gap between the real wage and inflation. The gap between the real wage and the inflation. So the gap between real wage, when the inflation increases, and we are getting the same wage. So it's very difficult for small income families to sustain. That is one important thing. And next, so labor laws implementation. The implementation of labor laws implementation. So there is no effective implementation of labor laws. That is also one of the important problem. If you have to implement the labor laws, then you have to make sure that minimum wage, minimum working hours, these all things will come into the picture. And the growth of informalization. The growth of informalization, very, very important. So the companies don't want to take the permanent workers. They want to encourage the informal workers. So temporary basis workers. If they have to take the permanent workers, then what you have to do? You have to give them EPF, PF. These are extra benefits and all. So they are taking only the contract workers. So that is also one of the important picture. So what is the outcome? If it continues, what will happen? If it continues, as India want to be a global manufacturing hub. Global manufacturing hub. If it is want to be a global manufacturing hub, if it can't properly understand the situations of the, it can't properly understand the situation of the informal, there's a large pool of working capital. It's a large pool of working capital. What will happen if you can't understand the large pool of working capital and you make the prices to rise but not the salaries? Even when we see in the history, the Alauddin Khilji, he made the market reforms. So he made sure that his soldiers get the things cheaper. So he has, in the same case, if you want to make the people to get less salary, then you should also make the things less affordable. If you are giving a normal minimal salaries and you are allowing the prices to rise, so definitely the unrest is going to happen. If there is unrest, what will happen? So the investment will, if you allow the unrest, what will happen? The global investments definitely will fail. Global investments, example, you can take the many difficult countries, like uncertain countries, unstable countries like the African countries, some Asian countries. You can see if there is an unrest in the society, definitely these capital investors or the foreign investors, definitely they will think twice and thrice. So it's very important for government to understand how these workers are facing, to understand and resolve these informal worker problems. And the government should not see it as just a law and order problem. Okay, so these are the important news of the today, and tomorrow we'll discuss with the tomorrow's newspaper. And thank you for being with us.